So the book of Acts gives us the model for reaching the ends of the earth. So I'm in Burma right now. The island of Bali is absolutely spectacular. We are in Cambodia here. This is a beautiful family that lives in a village that we've done distributions with. In the Great Commission, let's remember Jesus said, go and make disciples of all nations. And for us at World Mission, it's really important that the Word of God be a part of that. I mean, how can you really become a disciple if you don't have access to the Word of God? We are in Khor, the middle of Rendili land, and all these brothers are Rendili pastors. So are you guys happy about these units?
Yes.
All right. Cambodia is an amazing country. It's surrounded by Laos, Vietnam, and Thailand. And the 16 million people that live here, they say about 85% are Buddhists, and many of them have never heard the gospel for the first time.
And hello and welcome to the Great Commission Update. I'm Rusty Humphries. He's Greg Kelly. He's the CEO of World Mission, and we sure appreciate you being here. New year, lots of new things going on. Greg, first of all, I know you're going on another mission in a few weeks. What do you got coming up?
Yeah, great to see you, Rusty. I'm heading out to Africa again. So kind of my home away from home is East Africa. We do so much in northern Kenya, near the Somali border, South Sudan, kind of in that area. So I'll be there with some of our partners for a couple of days. And then from there, I'll be in Addis Ababa, which you know the capital.
Addis
country.
Ababa. That sounds like a 50s song. Addis Ababa, ba, 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 ba. No, it's not.
That's a fun one to say. Yeah. That is in Ethiopia.
Okay.
So just a little bit of Kenya. So I'll be heading up to Addis Ababa, spending a couple of days with our partners there. And then finally, I'll spend almost a week in Cairo. So we've got some real key partners there in Egypt representing all of North Africa. So I'm excited for it. It's always a fun place to go to. And when we go and meet with these partners, they represent so many different countries in all of Africa. So it'll be fun.
So I'm actually a little worried about you on this trip. In the news, not a couple of days ago, you're going to hear this show a week or so later, but there is Middle Eastern troubles brewing. We hit an Iranian leader. Iraq is a problem. Now we've kind of stirred up a hornet's nest, and you're kind of going right there. Are you concerned as an American? I know you're a Christian first, but you are an American. You stick out like a sore thumb there. Does that concern you for your safety?
You know, I mean, the places that we work, as you know, and our listeners from the Great Commission Update, World Mission is working in places where the gospel's never been. And so, as a result of that, by the very definition, the gospel not being there, there's going to be all kinds of crazy things that go on, and sometimes civil war, sometimes it's tribal, but Islamic activities and radical Islam in particular get a lot of the attention, and with that comes some pretty dramatic things like what we just saw in Iraq with these Iranian leaders. But I'll tell you what, Rusty, at the end of the day, it just reminds us and drives us even more that the work that we're doing is so vital, because these things, and using that as an example, the solution is not an economic solution. It's not even diplomacy. The issue, and those things are important, but at the end of the day, the only thing that was going to cause change or transformation is a heart change. And human beings, people can't do that. It's only the gospel that can cause transformation, and that's what we do. So it reminds us even more about the importance of our work of getting the gospel in there, despite the dangers. But many people paid a pretty heavy price to get the gospel into these kind of places.
I mean, the truth is, you're right. I mean, if we could get the world, following Christ more, we'd have a lot less problems. And that's a great goal, and I'm with you on it. But you're putting yourself in an area where it's not going to be real safe. Cairo's going to be a tough place. I mean, any of those other places that you're worried about, or just you don't worry about it?
I don't worry about it. I mean, we've been doing this, I personally, for 22 years. And I think for us, the really, safety that we take is in the strength of our relationship. So the people that are on the ground who are doing what we say the heavy lifting, most of the treasures that are distributed, Rusty, I would say 90% of every treasure that's distributed is done so by someone who doesn't even speak English. So the people on the ground, you have to have confidence in their ability and their instincts and their judgment when you're in their hands that they're not going to, put you in harm's way. We don't go down on the street corner in downtown Cairo with a megaphone starting to preach about Jesus. For our strategy is to the nationals that are on the ground, and that they, as they receive the gospel, then they're sharing the gospel in a very culturally appropriate way that translates better. It just connects better with people versus this American who's cavalier, who's running in there telling them about Jesus. That's not how we do things.
Okay, because I'm guessing, I don't know the history of missionaries other than what was told in the Bible. I'm guessing that maybe that's kind of how they did it at first. Okay, we're the white guys and we're going to save you because we know Jesus, so come follow us. And then next thing you know, they're in a boiling pot someplace. I don't know. Do you know the history of that kind of stuff?
So I think back we're going back, let's go 1600s, 1700s, when everywhere you would go, the gospel had never been before. So every single person who is a missionary is a trailblazer. They're going into a place. There's no national leaders to really work with. And so when you're going in there, you are literally the first ones coming in with the gospel. And, some of the people that have been inspirations, even for us here in 2020 now, remain from the 1700s. Like, for example, the Moravians. So the Moravians were really the first ones in the 1700s to really break away from the Church of England and to set up the first Protestant denomination. And you can imagine that riled some feathers at the time, and there was a lot of persecution as a result. But the Moravians, Rusty, were the ones who really were the pioneers, really, of global missions in a lot of ways. And there's one particular story about them. These two Moravian, these young guys. One guy name was Johann Dober, and another David Nitschmann. These are Germans, right? And this is in the 1700s, and they had heard about these African slaves that were in the West Indies. And they were told about these people, and they said, there's not a single Christian among them. There's no church. And these guys were brokenhearted by that. They said, well, someone's got to go. And the people who were knowledgeable about the whole West Indies, slave trading, all that, they said, yeah, the only problem is there's only one way to get there. And that's if you yourself were a slave.
What?
And they said, so be it.
Oh,
and
come on.
These two young men in their 20s sold themselves into slavery so that they could get on the next boat to go to the West Indies. And those are the kind of stories, those inspiring stories of self-sacrifice.
I've never heard of anything like that. What ended up happening with those guys?
Well, as the story goes, as they were at the shipyard and getting ready to leave, their families were devastated by it, thinking this is probably the last we're going to see them. And the last words they heard out of their mouths of these two young men were, "May the lamb that was slain receive the reward of his suffering." Just let that sink in for a second. These guys were so inspired by what Jesus did in the Great Commission, really, right? Wow. Go and make disciples of all nations, that they said, may the lamb that was slain receive the reward of his suffering. And it's those kind of pioneers, Rusty, from, the early days, centuries ago, that really inspired and became the foundation of missions today.
So they never heard from those two again?
They made it back, actually.
They did.
After years, they made it back. They seeded the gospel there. They came back, and they were successful in doing what they really, set out to do. But the Moravians really have a really foundational seed, even for us today, even at World Mission, because they went on. Here's the cool thing about it, Rusty, is that we look at life and the Great Commission through the lens of our own life, realizing what's important is that there's people that have gone before us, and there will people that will come after us. And what seed are we sowing into that to inspire kind of that next generation? That's something that we think about a lot, because even the Moravians, there's a guy who was named William Carey. And William Carey, they say he's the father of modern missions. You know who he was inspired by?
Who?
The Moravians.
Okay.
So Right. So here's a guy who's a British Christian missionary from we're talking the early 1800s. And he goes on to go to India where there's hardly a single Christian known. And this guy by himself ends up translating about 7 different languages of the New Testament in India in just 40 years of serving there. And, there's stories about his wife almost dying. His 5-year-old son actually died of dysentery. It's crazy what the price that these people paid to go and share the gospel with the people. They don't speak their language. They don't look anything like them. But that was the early days of missions activity. And William Carey now, how'd you like that is on your tombstone? Wow. The father of modern missions.
Wow. That's amazing. Now, are guys today having that kind of not only impact, but having to sacrifice that much? Again, we've talked about this before in the Great Commission, but not a lot of people know there's still slaves out there.
Yes, there are. There are.
And not like 1 or 2. There's a lot of slaves still in the continent of Africa. It still is happening today. And you're going into those areas, right?
Well, yeah, Mauritania is probably the best example. There's thousands and thousands of slaves in the country of Mauritania, but there's so much more that goes on under the radar that's unknown about. Even the whole dowry system. There's tribes in the northern part of Kenya where I'll be going to that literally the objective of your life is to get married, of course, but then it's all about the dowry. So the family from your birth as a young lady, it's all setting you up so that the family gets 20, 30, 50, maybe 100 cows, depending on sort of your pedigree or your class standing in the clan. And that young woman is going to be essentially sold off to be a child bride of more than likely a guy who's already got 2, 3, 5. We've heard of instances of more than 100 wives.
Wow.
That's her life. That's her life. So, that's a form of slavery, right? When you think about it.
So it's not the guy paying the family to get the girl. It's the girl's family paying the guy to take her off their hands?
No. It's in the case of Africa, the male's family is paying the dowry. So they're the ones paying the cows, the goats.
The male's paying for the female.
The male is paying for the female. In India, it's just the opposite, where the female family is the one that pays the dowry. And so it's just this dowry system in some ways is a form of slavery because the family's inspiration or motivation, I should say, for marriage is not so much my daughter met such a wonderful man. They fell in love and they live happily ever after. They're getting paid, and
I'm just curious, and this is my terrible curiosity. How much do you have to give to get somebody? You said it was different, but I just have no idea. Any idea what that is in American dollars?
Well, if you talk about a cow, you're probably talking, for a full-grown cow, you're probably $250, $300. And in some instances, a dear friend of mine was just married, and this was a Christian wedding. So it doesn't it's a little bit different because there is an element of, hey, I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And in this case, the guy's in ministry. But nevertheless, the custom or the tradition trumps the fact that, it's just a Christian marriage. But hey, we still want some cows.
Sure.
We still want some goats. So I don't know, I think he gave up like 20 cows and 6 camels and 100 goats or something like that.
So did you ever kind of do the math in your head going, that cost him $5,000 or $10,000 or what?
For the more expensive ones, you're probably in the neighborhood of $5,000. So in keeping in mind in that culture, that is a truckload of money.
Right.
So for us.
In America, that's called a couple of dates.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Just completely different than what we're used to. And everybody thinks, that doesn't happen anymore. It does.
Today. It's going on today, every single day. I was actually joking. My son and daughter were just married about a year and a half ago, about 3 months apart. And I told everyone, for my daughter's wedding, we're doing an African wedding. And, I'll get the dowry. And then for my son, we're doing an Indian wedding. fucking fun.
You're going to clean up.
I thought it was funny anyway, but yeah, I cleaned up.
Oh,
No, we
that's
do
funny.
that, but it's so fascinating because we're just not accustomed to that whole, dowry system here in America, but it is alive and well every single day. I promise you, the dowry system's going on in Africa and Asia.
Wow.
And so it is, yeah, like we said, it's a form of slavery. But back to these guys, these inspirations.
I was going to ask you something on that, and that is, you're very humble, so I know this may be hard for you to answer, but I'm just kind of curious. You talked about these guys that did all these things in the modern missionary. Where do you see yourself? Where do you see World Mission in that story? Do you see yourself in that story?
Well, I mean, I think all of us have to find ourselves in that story because we're all called to be a part of that story. It's a some have an opportunity. There's only going to be one William Carey, but all of us have to embrace that. Jesus called us all to go and make disciples, and some have bigger platforms than others. I'm certainly privileged here at World Mission to what I feel has a great platform. I will tell you this, Rusty, one of my favorite stories. I'm almost equally passionate about us seeing the gospel go to the places like Libya and Algeria of the world as I am watching that light bulb go off in someone's life who maybe doesn't currently have an expression of it. And one of those instances was a number of years ago, but I was doing a vacation Bible school. So this church that we partner with asked me to come in and just share with the kids, and I did. And I just kind of shared at their level about people who can't read, and talking about the treasure, and imagine not reading, but this you can listen to. And I was going through all of that. And when I was done, this father came up to me with his son, who's probably 5 years old, 6 years old maybe. And the father said, my son wants he has something to share with you. And this little guy looked at me and he's like, Mr. Greg, God's calling me to become a missionary. And oh my gosh, my heart just broke. I just, the Holy Spirit just used that moment to really encourage that young boy to, give his life to this cause of sharing the gospel with those who haven't heard. So I haven't kept track with him or anything, but it's inspiring, buddy. And I don't take it for granted. It's a real privilege to plant this seed. What God does with it is up to him. But as I know, until the day he calls me elsewhere, I'm going to keep plowing into this and encourage people to find their place.
Well, you have blessed me. You're going to allow me to go on a trip with you, and I kind of want to do kind of a build-up every week of what is going to happen. Where are we going?
We can't even tell people. It's so dangerous. I haven't even told you everything, Rusty.
Okay, I'm ready. The good news is my whole body's a weapon, so I got that going for me if we have any problems.
We are in good shape. No. We are going to go to Bangladesh first. And, we've shared on the Great Commission Update about one of the great, or I should say more tragic refugee crises in the world, which is the Rohingya people from Burma. Mm-hmm. It is probably the closest form of modern day ethnic cleansing in the last 5 years that there's been on planet Earth, as these precious people, some million people, have been pushed out of Burma and have landed, keeping in mind that Burma didn't want them, Bangladesh doesn't want them. They are literally in a refugee camp. 1 million people became the largest refugee camp essentially in the time of 18 months, filled with Rohingyas. We are going to go to that area of Bangladesh. We'll meet with the partners, World Mission partners that are distributing the Bengali and Rohingya treasures. We'll meet some of the new Christians that have come to know the Lord, and we'll do some relief projects. These people are suffering on many different levels, and so some humanitarian outreaches we'll do. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then from there, you and I are heading up north, and we're going to Nepal. And
now this is what I said. So, Greg, so they sent me a list of the things that I need to bring. And it's not like you're going to a party. It's hiking boots and hiking sticks and huge backpacks and sleeping bags. And I go, are we hiking much? And he says, well, we are going up by Mount Everest Base Camp. It's like, you're kidding, right? No, so Mount Everest Base Camp? Seriously?
It's a hike through the woods. No problem for you, Rusty. Yeah, you'll be good.
Seriously, this sounds like a massive. I'm going to the gym and bringing my backpack and practicing.
That's good. Yeah, so one of our our leaders in Nepal, his tent making. All of our guys have some kind of a tent making initiative they do to help raise funds and blend into the community. And so he leads Trek. And so he's been to base camp, Everest Base Camp, like 30 times. We're going to an area it's at about the same elevation, similar elevation in a different part of the Himalayas. But, and I've been there, so you'll be good, and pass by all kinds of villages. But the really cool part about this trip that Rusty and I will be on there is we'll have all of our India leaders with us. So we'll have like 5 of the World Mission National Partners representing India, and they will be journeying with us. We'll be fellowshipping, and we're just going to be trusting the Lord for the decade of 2020 and what God wants to do in this part of the world.
I mean, it's amazing. I will say, though, as a fat guy, looking at you, you're in super good shape. Am I in big trouble? I mean, I am working. It's not just a New Year's resolution. I've been working on it a little bit, but I mean, that sounds rough, man.
In all the times we've done this, we've only had one person who had to turn around and not make it. So I'm confident.
Were they fatter than me?
You'll be able to do it. I will throw you on my back if we need to. You are going to get there.
Okay. Wow. Well, yeah. and the great thing for the audience is that we're going to be bringing the cameras and drones, and we are going to do shows from there and really bring this home. I think you're going to get a very good idea of what it's like to go to these places. Now, the other thing I've had is that a lot of those places aren't real friendly to cameras, and police officers like to take them. And so, that's, none of this is easy, right, Greg? This is a tough trip.
I mean, I think Bangladesh is a place that's a little more in the refugee camps, Rusty, particularly a place like the Rohingya area where the statistics say they're 100% Muslim. Now, we know that's not true because even in our efforts, we've seen a number of Rohingya come to Christ and churches planted. But nevertheless, it's a majority Muslim area, so all the more sensitive. And the leaders of the camps are Muslim themselves. So we're very conscientious of that, very discreet. We won't be having a drone flying over the top of that area. But in Nepal...
Although that sounds cool. That would be a good shot.
It would be.
Maybe if I go really high and they can't see it, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe that's an idea.
Or it'll be target practice for somebody with a good rifle, which would not be good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But we'll be able to, I think it's, again, comes back to the wisdom of the individuals that you're with. And we'll be with some of the wisest people that I've had the privilege of meeting. So we'll be in good hands. They'll make good choices for us. But yeah, we're going to places where the gospel's not been. So it'll be fun for us to share with our listeners and viewers of the Great Commission Update so they can see it and experience it for themselves.
Yeah. So if you would please help us out. And help us so that we can bring enough treasures to these people. I get a lot of emails now, Greg, and I've gotten a couple, and I got to forward them to you. I just got them the other day. Mr. Greg, you sent a lot of treasures here. We're out of them. Please send more. I'm guessing you get that a lot. And
those emails are interesting because on one hand you're celebrating, and on the other hand it breaks your heart because everybody always wants more.
Yeah. So we want to. What is the goal on the trip that we're going on? How many treasures are we trying to get there?
We'll be taking in the neighborhood of 400 to 500.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they cost $40 a piece.
$40 each
to get there. Yeah. So if you would please help and make a difference, and you know what? I'll tell you what. We'll even thank you on the programs.
Yes.
If you donate. Hey, I'll even say this treasure was donated by Jimmy Smith of Fort Wayne, Indiana. So please go to the website, worldmission.cc, and say, hey, I want to donate. I want to, please say my name. And heck, I'd love to spend a whole show just saying, Jimmy Smith, Cindy, whatever, and just say everybody's name. I'd love to do that. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And it doesn't cost that much, and it makes a world of difference, Greg, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, we can just paint the picture, Rusty. So when we go there, there's an element of accountability and just stewardship, seeing what God's doing with the treasures that precious people who are watching the Great Commission Update and others help make happen. But the reality is that long after Rusty and I are gone from Bangladesh and Nepal, there will be a family, there will be, in some cases, an entire village listening to the treasure that you made happen months and months after we're gone. I mean, I can't imagine a cooler thing. Standpoint of, okay, $40 does that. Yeah, $40 does it. Your $40, God might use that treasure. And we hear this story all the time. So I'm not just sort of, dreaming pie in the sky. Your $40 may be responsible for a new church being planted. I mean, how crazy is that? But those are the kind of things, Rusty, that could happen.
Yeah. So please, if you would, go to worldmission.cc. That's worldmission.cc, and help make a difference in the lives of hundreds, if not thousands of people. You can do that. So please, worldmission.cc. Greg, wrap it up if you would.
And we're so thankful for you taking your time to listen and watch us today on the Great Commission Update. Do us a favor and share this with your friends and family. Encourage them. We want to, Rusty and I, when we do this, we want to encourage you. We want to edify you. Want to challenge you a little bit and make you maybe think about something you've never thought of before. But we want you to know you're a part of it. And we appreciate you so much for participating.
We do. We thank you very much. Make sure you subscribe to the program, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, the Range Broadcasting, whatever it is. Subscribe. Make sure you watch us each and every week. I'm Rusty Humphreys. He's Greg Kelly. And this is the Great Commission Update.